we're now down to our 7 final players, who include a number of veterans that we've been questioning about for the large part of the last 12 months when it comes to whether they should retire or whether they should remain at the club. So stick around for that so we can discuss that at length. But first, we'll start with Reef McKinnon, who has been at the club going into his 5th year next year as a non-free agent. And there was plenty of talks of Mr. Reef McKinnon over this off-season, whether he'd stay, whether he'd entertain interest from rival clubs, and it seems like the latter wasn't possible because there wasn't enough interest garnered from other clubs for Reef McKinnon. And he survives, I guess, the delistings and potential of being re-rookied. He stays on the primary list ahead of Oleg Markov and Ash Johnson, which seems fair, and doesn't get delisted in lieu of Kruger and Josh Eyre and Aiden Begg and those types of players. It makes sense that Reef McKinnon deserves another opportunity to go into his final year of his contract in 2025. I think he still has a lot to prove. He has a lot to show, but he does need to show at a certain point that whatever position he is offered, he makes that his own. I always refer to Reef McKinnon as this jack of all trades, master of none. He's okay in the forward line. He's a little bit too slim, doesn't have that aura when he's in the air. He was drafted as a midfielder. That hasn't come to fruition. He's been tried down back in the VFL. That hasn't quite worked out just yet. So there's still a bit to be seen with Reef McKinnon. And if I had to predict what contract could be offered, if one is offered next year, I think if he does well and plays, let's say, if he can play 15 games next year for Collingwood and average his goal or two a game and have impacts in other realms of the game, I would like to see Reef McKinnon get offered a 2-year contract extension. I think that's fair, with potentially a player option in the final year. If he plays X amount of games, and he can get an automatic trigger to play that 3rd year. Next up, we have TJ. Tujiath, brother of CJ, who played 1 game this year against North Melbourne in that epic comeback game. And he looked okay, didn't he? He looked okay. Hasn't done amazingly well in the VFL, but the same case is made for every other player in the VFL. In the Collingwood system is players injured in the AFL level, players injured at VFL level. No continuity, no synergy. Makes it very difficult to have a consistent year on a personal level at VFL. I think I'd almost be willing to give TJ, let's say, if he can show some promising signs in the VFL, I'd be offering him a 2-year contract halfway through the season to show, hey, we're going to invest in you. We're really pleased with the progress you're making. We're going to give you 2 years, a bit of security there. Show us what you got and give us all that you can. But I can also see this type of player going late into next year without a contract, and then letting the entirety of the year determine whether he deserves a spot on the AFL list in the end. So it could go both ways, right? It just depends on performances. There's some players most of these players you can't predict, right? How they're going to perform, what type of contract they're going to give, but we just try and make sense of it all as much as we can, right? And now we have Will Parker, Category B rookie. So I'm not too sure. I think same with the rookie A's. Please, in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. If you've played more than 10 games in your first 3 years, whether it be season 1, season 2, season 3, you must move on to the senior list. So Will Parker has played maybe 4 or 5 games this year at AFL level, and he's shown signs. He played well against Melbourne in that practice match game. I said practice match because Melbourne really mentally checked out in that final game of the year. But he played really well, got his first goal, showed some promising signs. He will remain on the rookie list if my logic is correct when it comes to the rulings around Category B rookies. And then, see how he goes, really. I was surprised to see that he was getting the nod ahead of players like TJ, Harry Dimatia, Jacob Ryan in the backline, even Oleg Markov for that matter, right? So Fly clearly believes in, or the development side from the club believe that Will Parker has something special in him. For him to come in with no preseason, came in late in the preseason to join Collingwood and play at AFL level, more games than most players who were drafted into Collingwood in the last couple of years. I think he's done really well to get where he is now. And if Fly likes what he's seeing, then I can't see Will Parker not getting another contract beyond the end of next year. What that looks like, I'm not entirely sure, but he seems like a bit of a teacher's pet at this point. But for good reason. For good reasons. Not because he's sucking anyone's backside. It's because there's potential there. Okay? All right, moving on to the veterans, and we'll start with Tom Mitchell, who is a non-free agent. He's served the club for 3 years, going into 2025. Well, this would be his third year. And the question is, can he stay healthy? If you've seen my video about Tom Mitchell on an individual level, we dived really deep into that video, and it's all going to come down to, can he stay on the field? Can he play the games he needs to play? How is he when the game is in transition, when the ball's moving really quick outside of the stoppages? Can he keep up with that sort of play? Because we know what he's good at. We know he's good inside. We know he's crafty. We know he's intelligent. It's just the endurance side of things when it comes to his game. It's such a shame. Tom Mitchell, in another sport where fitness and athletic ability isn't completely dependent on whether you play beyond the average age, he would be a basketballer to his 40 like LeBron. He'd be a soccer player like Ronaldo or Messi to his 40. But unfortunately, AFL, the rigors of it when it comes to the endurance side of things, is usually the first thing to get you into father time and subsequently have you retire at some point. So it'll be dependent on that, and then from there, it'll probably just be year-on-year contracts for Tom Mitchell. Next up, we have Will HoskinElliott, who got his contract extended this year to the end of next year. Unrestricted free agent, so one of those players who we probably could lose for nothing, given if he was to go to another club, he wouldn't necessarily go for a big contract or a big salary or a big contract length. Where's he from? Let's see. Is there any potential that he moves back home if it's not Melbourne? I assume it would be Melbourne, no? Let's see. Western Jets. So he's from North Sunshine. So I don't see with Will HoskinElliott going anywhere. He'd probably look to retire in the black and white colours, really. Do I see him playing beyond next year? Yes. He's one of those players that I believe still holds great value to the club. Can play anywhere on the field, and that's just what you need with the type of team that the Flyers put together. Once again, will be year on year. It will be year on year for someone like Will HoskinElliott. Sorry, guys. I've been really lazy with the lights, and I must say I've been quite busy, so I just haven't been on my A game when it comes to the production side of things. I do intend on making more of an effort on that, but I do apologise. And then we have Steele Sidebottom going into his 17th year next year as an unrestricted free agent. So once again, a player who could walk for nothing if he chooses to, but it'd be hard to see Steele Sidebottom in any other colour, right? I think this is a player who will retire next year. I think that's it for Steele. I'd like to see Steele retire before the footy retires him. Have it on your own terms. Top 5 in the Copeland Trophy this year. So what do you say? What do you say? Who's to say he should retire at the end of this year if you finish top 5 in the best and fairest in 2024? That's the argument there. I would love to see Steele play for as long as possible, but if we see more signs throughout the year that Steele's getting on and he's being pushed around in different positions to accommodate for other players and try and revivify his form, which we did when we put him in the midfield, which is probably what really got him to an extra year for 2025. So we'll see. Year on year, that's all I can say. And final, Mr. Dependable, Scott Pendlebury, year 20 next year. Unrestricted free agent as well, of course. I think he plays on in 26 to beat that record, the Boomer Harvey record, games record. And he's mentioned in podcasts and whatnot that he's not going to let that hinder his decision making when it comes to, okay, well, am I past it or am I still good for another year? I think we'll see some positional changes for Pendlebury this year. Maybe something off the half back from time to time. Maybe he misses a couple games just to nurture and nurse him through the home and away season. But I can see him being deployed in the half back line to try and extend his career furthermore. Have that split between the midfield and the back line, perhaps. I'm not sure about a forward move. Playing as a high half forward, he's not necessarily that pressure player that you'd be wanting on the high half forward line. So once again, another year-on-year player. So really interesting to see where all these veterans end up at the end of next year. I can see if you play the numbers, you could probably see one or two of those players retiring out of. So we got Tom Mitchell, Will HoskinElliott, Sidebottom, Pendlebury, and then if we talk about previous segments, Mason Cox is almost a sure thing, in my opinion. Jeremy Howe's there, Jamie Elliott's in conversation, and maybe you throw in, Myercheck, who knows, okay? So that's the end of this series, part 3, to the contract predictions, if you want to call it that. And it was fun. It was good to see where we think everyone is at. If I've missed something, let me know in the comment section. But plenty of decisions to be made for list management, but also is somewhat dependent on, it hinges on how these players perform. That's what it is at the end of the day. Their performances will dictate what their contract offers or will be at the end of the season. So, yeah. Go Pies.